So mindfulness has taught me to watch this monkey mind doing its thing, out of control, being crazy, and not always follow it. I was in Vipassana meditation, and Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation thing. Wake up at 4 a.m. You do meditations all day until 9 p.m. and you go to bed, rinse and repeat for 10 days. And on day 6 or something of this, completely silent, no phones, no journaling, no music, no podcasts, no reading, no writing, just meditating, eating, bathroom, sleep. And on day 6, during Vipassana, what you get for your dinner is 2 pieces of fruit. On about day 6, after 6 days of silence, we're queuing up for our pieces of fruit. And there's lots of these printed signs that say 2 pieces of fruit per student. And as I'm watching the queue, standing there in silence, being awake from 4 a.m. the last 6 days, and I can see a couple of guys at the front and they're taking like 3 pieces of fruit. And as I stood in the queue, I could hear my mind. I'm going to swear now, so it's just the inner workings of my mind. And I can hear my mind saying, "Hey, it says 2 pieces of fruit on the sign, not 3. Why are you taking 3 pieces of fruit? What's your bad takes 3 pieces of fruit? Plus guys are still queuing up." I could hear this in my mind going, just to watch that and go, "Kev, it's not your fruit. You're not taking it. It's none of your damn business what the guy is doing." And then to ask myself, where else in my life does my mind want to get involved in things that are absolutely none of its business? And the answer to that is all the time. When I hear myself or my mind wanting to get involved in things, I have a little mantra to myself now. I hear my mind getting involved stuff, and I just say, "Kev, 2 pieces of fruit." That just immediately brings me back to the present moment. So mindfulness has taught me to watch this monkey mind doing its thing, out of control, being crazy, and not always follow it.
This is the Gifts of Trauma podcast. Stories of transformation and healing through compassionate inquiry.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Gifts of Trauma. This is Jem coming in today, and I'm welcoming my brother and co-host, co-creator, co-conspirator, co-dreamer, so many co's to be named still in our future, Mr. Kevin Young.
Thank you, Jen. I like the last one best. I like the co-conspirator. I like that one. That seemed to resonate with me. It's great to be here.
That one came pure out of our synergy. It's great to meet you in presence today. This was a great joy getting to know you a little more through the virtual space. And now I look forward to taking and gathering the bits that seem the most relevant in our harmonic today and joining them in this conversation.
I'm a little bit frightened at what is out there online about me because, I like to be playful. I mean, there's nothing that I'm honestly worried about more. There might be some embarrassing stuff for me, or I've been playing music or telling stories online and thinking, "Oh, I hope Shem didn't find me reading that book or playing my guitar on Facebook." But I'm open to it all, Shem.
Well, you have been very courageous and loving with sharing your experiences of your life on a lot of different platforms. And I love that about you. It shows me your deep service. It just runs all the way through you. And something I discovered that I didn't know about you and I both is we have a deep hospitality background, and you have a cafe background. Your parents were caterers. You shared a story at some point that I read about you being that cafe owner who would show up whenever somebody needed a teaspoon. It's a kind of morsel of information that tells a lot about a person, and also something I related deeply to, and I think a lot of people might as well. I sense there might be a few heads nodding out there in resonance.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know whether that's a learned thing or that is an innate thing or a trauma response, possibly the latter. That ability to know what people need possibly before they even do. It's been a real skill and a real beautiful thing, and something that I have to manage as well. It can have me being a little bit overzealous in caretaking. So it's a real skill, and I really, I really celebrate it in myself. And it just needs some minding, some caution.
Yeah, that and another quote I came across really took me to the heart of, I think, the space we'll be in today. And what the listeners don't know because they can't see, and even you can't see, I'm going to show you. My hand has been on my heart ever since I sat down with you because I feel like I share a lot of this walk with you. I too am a great anticipator of other people's needs. And I feel like this is going to be a beautiful space to carve out, to talk about the origins of this sort of behavior, the gifts, and the way into truth. So the other quote that I read that kind of stopped me in my tracks, this is a recent blog post you shared back in April, and it was really speaking to the themes we're going to be covering today: attachment, adaptation, and addiction. Do you know which post I'm talking about?
Okay. Yeah.
In that, there's a sentence that says, I could hide myself so well that I was a delight to look after. That hit me on many, many layers. And the first thing it made me wonder, because I know you're a parent of two nearly full-grown women now, it made me wonder how much of your parenting experience and your experience of the two of them growing up mirrored to you something that you didn't get when you were growing up. Because to say I was a delight to look after because I hid myself so well, that brings in a perspective, a very weird and looking back kind of perspective. And it feels like a good place to start today, if you're happy to just jump in there.
Sure. Well, I can recognize in my own children that they didn't hide themselves. They were funny, cheeky, passionate, kind, intelligent, confident. They learned very quickly to say, no, I don't want to do that, or I don't like that, or I don't want to eat that, or I don't want to wear that. No, I think for me as a child, I was speaking to my mom recently, and I was actually talking about my own childhood and her experience. My mom was, less than 20, maybe 21, and she had 3 kids. I was asking her just how it was for her, how that was. We lived in a really underprivileged area of Belfast at a very dangerous time. And my mom was talking about a lot of the time she was afraid and she was lonely. And I was asking her about me, and that's where that story or that quote arose from. But I mean, I knew it for a long time. And my mom told me that even my birth, she said, you just arrived. You just arrived and you were just so peaceful and you were just so quiet. I kind of imagine myself landing out of my mother, this waddling baby with a smile and I'm okay expression on its face. I don't need anything. And my mom told me that I have an older sister. She's just under 2 years older than me, and she is an absolute beautiful woman. Growing up, and we're pretty sure, and she won't mind me saying this, we're pretty sure that if she was born today, she would be diagnosed as ADHD very early in her life. But that wasn't a thing back in 1974, 1975. So my mum was 18 years old, already had a child who was full on, a very busy child. And then I came along. And then very soon after, my younger sister came along, who was very clingy. My mum would describe her, very attached to my mother. So there I was in between crazy sister, a clingy sister. And my mum was like, you were just a delight. You were just a delight. And she tells stories that people would come around to her sisters or probably to help my mum out. And they would say, I'm not taking her, as in my older sister. I'm not taking her, but I'll take him. And I would take him to stay in other people's houses and, get looked after because I was a delight. I was just an easy child to look after. And maybe there's part of my nature is easygoing. I think there is to some degree. And I think in the work that we do, I now understand that I learned very, very, very early. There's no point. There's no point making noise. You're not going to get attended to. This woman, my mother, a lovely woman, she's preoccupied. So yeah, I learned to be very self-sufficient, after myself, to be pleasant, be polite, be helpful. I think that traits or those traits are still present today.
I'm not doubtful in any way that you arrived with this, as I look at you now, clear-eyed, peaceful, loving self. I mean, I see that essence. I witnessed that essence in you, and I love that essence in you. I was wondering as you were just talking to me about this delightfulness that you brought into people's lives, and knowing what we know also about also learn to hide yourself, and that somehow you conveyed to her, it's okay, I don't need anything. It's okay. I don't need anything. Like, what's coming up for you?
Yeah, I recognize now that there's sadness around that. Yeah. Yeah, that a lot of that was a learned behavior. Also knowing then that the people pleaser in me, person that didn't like to upset people, that didn't like to be a bother or a burden or an annoyance, that part of me also led me into very difficult situations where I wasn't able to stand as myself, that I would give up of myself so that the other wouldn't be upset. And it's really lovely to hear you say you're looking at me now, clear-eyed and present and loving and still. That has been a lot of work to return to that, because there was a lot of space in between that loving, kind, gentle, nice child. There was a lot of space between that and maybe over the last 8 or 10 years coming back to that. There was a 30-year period in the middle where it was a little bit more chaotic. Let's put it that way. As I look very briefly over my life, I can really see that I ran away from myself. I tried to run away from myself for a long, long time. It happened this week, and I'll share something with you this week. But through my whole life, Shem, people have said to me, "Hey, what is it with you? You're different." What does that even mean? What do you, what is, that just does not compute. I do not know what you're talking about. Please help me understand what you mean. I don't know what you mean when you say that to me. And just this week, one of my colleagues said that she was talking to one of her colleagues at our conference. And they had a conversation that I arose in. I do some work with this friend of mine, talking about meditation. And the person was at the conference says, "Oh, I'm so happy you're doing some work with Kevin. He hugged me on the last day of the conference, and it was the safest hug I have ever had." I don't know what that means. I don't get it. What does that mean? I'm really coming much more into this space where I can see what I do for people and how I make people feel and how people seem to be and when they're near me or with me. Still find it really, really difficult.
Can I offer something that's coming up a little bit as you're asking this question? Why? What are they talking about? There's a flavor to this inquiry that reminds me of a blog post you wrote back in 2020, I think, about being a fraud.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say that's related?
totally.
Yeah.
Completely. This idea of hiding myself. I think I have hidden over those years. I have hidden myself so much that I couldn't even see myself. I had hidden myself so well. I didn't even know where I was. I couldn't find myself. That's very cliched spiritual talk and finding yourself, but I had done such a good job of hiding myself that when people reflect me back to me, where I see that lately over the last few years, I've started to see that and really acknowledge that and lean into that and see it as a great privilege that people would say that sort of thing to me. There's still an aspect of myself that sees me as a crazy bumbling Irishman who doesn't really know much about anything and breezes through life seeming to be unannoyed, if there's such a word, not upset by anything. I quite often ask myself, I do work with people in groups, and there's an upset or an annoyance. I really can't find any anger or annoyance in me about this thing that everyone seems to be upset about. Is there something wrong with me? Should I be more annoyed? Should I be more upset? Should I be more angry? And it just doesn't seem to be there. It really doesn't.
That makes sense to me because I really believe about you that your core essential self is very connected to source. And that too did not just come. I mean, yes, it did. You were born with it, but it was a long trip back. As you said, it was a 30-year trip back. And I'm watching a big pull of air as I see that to you. So Let's talk a little bit about that time in between and that journey. And as you were talking, I think it's also important for the audience that we place you within a cultural context, because when you talk about being an anticipator of needs and of watching everyone and being very careful not to create a burden for anybody, I'm hearing a vigilance that sounds familiar. And it's reminding me of the vigilance that you expressed when you were talking to Stephen Brown in the conversation that we'll reference in the show about growing up in Northern Ireland. So I think it's also important that this isn't just the small family unit, but you also were growing up in this, as you mentioned, very dangerous time.
And we learned very, very early to be careful, to be vigilant, to be mindful where we could go, where we couldn't go, and to live with a lot of fear. Fear was just normal. It's just normal. Going to school, coming from school, going to work, coming from work, which discos we went to as kids, or which pubs we drunk in as young people. You had to be really vigilant and really careful. And I met someone just recently who's been a friend of my sister for 40 years. And he said to me, "Do you remember the first time I met you?" Yep. No, I don't. He said, "You were being beat up on the street in the town that I lived in. And this guy and another guy intervened, kind of rescued me from that fight and brought me back to my father's fish and chip shop." I don't remember that, but that's how it was. That's how it was, just getting beat up on the street. And here I was, this soft, little, pleasing, accommodating boy getting beat up on the street. So yeah, we learned to be very vigilant. Another reason, again, I think my mother, I can only imagine, would be very stressed with 3 children living where she lived. Was very stressed and overwhelmed. And so learning how to read my mother and know what was going on and where to be and where to stand and where not to stand. And I think I learned very quickly, read bodies, energy, people, faces, whatever that is. Yeah. So again, that has stayed with me, that trait, that ability to read. Answer your question.
Yeah, you did. You did, because we're talking about all of the things that shape you to be a certain way. And when you say, I don't know what you're talking about when you describe me, it also feels related to what is the heart of the conversation when we talk about attachment, adaptation, addiction. And really, truly, when we talk about trauma, we're talking about a disconnection from the self. So what you're talking about is illustrating and painting the picture of how you got disconnected from yourself. You don't even remember being brought back to this fish and chips. You were in sheer survival. When I look back and I imagine you, I see you completely tracking the world outside of you because you had to. What other choice do you have?
Sure. It's really nice that you said that, J'aime, because we're talking about this 30-year period in between being 10 and being 40. I was having a conversation with Sataram's husband, Par Prakash, and we were just chatting about spirituality and religion, this type of thing. A real wave of sadness, it's just landing right now, at how I would have loved to have found this version of myself when I was 20 or 17, and to have found spirituality, to have found compassion, to have found, not found compassion, but found a world where I could be compassionate. Compassion was always there. Find a space where I could be that and not be criticized or shamed for that. Yeah, it really made me sad that I wasn't able to find that so much earlier in my life, but I couldn't because of how I was trying to survive. And on that spirituality kind of religion thing, again, growing up in the north of Ireland, religion to me, there wasn't a lot of distance between religion and bombs or religion and guns. So there was a short journey to move from God to guns. And I absolutely did not want to be involved with violence or guns or hatred or sectarianism or homophobia. I didn't want to be. I knew from a really early age I didn't want to be. That didn't make me feel comfortable. But yet there was no space to be spiritual or religious where I came from unless you were involved with segregation and separation and sectarianism. There was no space for that. So I ran so hard and tried so hard to get away from this source calling, this compassion calling. I tried so hard and used many, many, many vices to move myself away from this real spiritual calling, because I had to. I had to do that to survive. I don't know if it's not a regret on my part. It's just a sadness that I wish I had found this home for my spirituality and my compassion. I wish I'd have found it 30 years ago. But
I share that. I feel that. I want to just invite everyone to have just a moment, because I'm feeling like this is a reflective experience of a lot of people who do come back home to themselves. And I want to say, while we're taking a moment, as we look around at the world, it hasn't gotten any less chaotic. And I'm just really grateful that somehow in this world, you've managed to do it now. I'm so grateful we're here getting to do this and feel this and experience this. Yeah.
can I say something about that, Jim? The way for me to do that was an indirect approach. I didn't have to grow my compassion. I didn't have to grow my spirituality. I didn't have to grow my desire to be in connection with source or presence or consciousness. I had to remove the barriers to it, which was shame, fear, addiction, grief. I had to work on those things. And when I worked on those things, authenticity, when I worked on all those things, as I am working on those things, let me say that, healing them or removing them or getting to know them or be aware of them, then that compassionate spiritual connection to source shines automatically. It's already there. There's no work to do with presence, no work to do with source. I just have to do the work of untangling those parts of my personality that I created years and years ago to survive.
Right now, all of us, anytime we turn on anything online, we're advertised, we're offered something, always a thing to add on. And so I really appreciate you talking about it's not about adding anything on, it's about looking at what's in the way. And I would love to get back a little bit into this particular piece that you name around shame. There's a couple things that come to mind to me. One of them is, how is the good one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't need anything, of those three children, how does that one come into the world feeling shame for anything, for any need that they may have? Let's just stay with that.
Aren't they exactly the same thing? Because of course I needed things. Of course I needed things. I was, as a young child, I was a boy. I needed a lot of things, as all children do. I needed to be attuned to. I needed to be emotionally supported. I needed to be held. I was highly sensitive. I needed to be celebrated for who I was. And at a really young age, I just was different, Shane. And of course, I couldn't ask for those things. So then they became shameful. There's something wrong with me. I want to fight and I don't want to do these things and I don't want to. So there's something wrong with me. So immediately that shame is built in.
And what's underneath the shame?
Fear of needing and being rejected, fear of needing and being told you can't have it, fear of being ignored, fear of being soft and gentle and kind and compassionate, fear of being honest. I had lots of cousins around my same age, and I moved away from Belfast when I was sort of 6 or 7. And a lot of those young men, as a lot of young men did in that time, went on to steal cars and get into real trouble with police and stuff, just wasn't me. It just never was. So already you're different from the masses. You're different from the mass population. And that's not to blame the mass population, because they were only responding as best as they could. I was a very gentle, easygoing, placid, timid child in a really aggressive and dangerous world. So you have to hide yourself. And that's where shame comes from.
And I feel the sadness arising also in that mixture of shame and fear, the sadness of not getting those needs met, of just knowing you're going to take care of it yourself. There's a sadness, there's a loneliness there.
That was the theme of my childhood, loneliness.
It's the name of the EP that you dropped, your first album, Lonely Demon.
It is. I think the name describes itself. There was an anger or a desire or a rage at the world that I can't be myself, and yet I have to keep that demon all locked up and lonely. And yeah, that's where that came from. That's why that album is called Lonely Demon, because it's lonely.
Yeah.
Come back to me, come back, she said. Don't be a lonely demon. To rid myself of the hateful man. To the ground I punched and kicked him. You're not me. You're not me. You're not me. No, you're not me. You're not me. Now my lover I do hold. Her bosom
Yeah, I just
I
really
am.
appreciated the timing of you sharing the time that you're also sharing. I have my certification as a compassionate inquiry therapist. I'm making myself very visible, and also I'm releasing what I sense was a transmutation of that experience and that expression of the loneliness and the rage and the unmet needs through art. I mean, you became a musician when you were 39. There's a couple places I'd love to go. I'm going to offer you a couple. The first one, the creative expression, the creative alchemy of how art, of how music served you. I would love to hear about that. But equally, what's tearing me right now is coming back to this conversation about a highly sensitive boy in a time where certainly there was no language for that. And that's what I think is alive and well, and giving that very attuned, safe hug to people, right? It's that sensitive part of you that's still different.
Yeah.
And how are you doing with that difference these days? How are you taking care of that different one?
Yeah, let's talk about that highly sensitive boy and how I'm doing with that now. I am absolutely celebrating that right now and embracing that and owning that. I recognize that that's why people like to work with me, because I make them. I don't make them. I create a space or an environment where they perceive themselves to be safe. And it's a real talent, skill, attribute that I have that I can do that. I notice a real residence in me to speak to spiritually. I am not doing that. It is being done. It is being done that I am now in a space where I have worked enough on my own fear and shame to allow that highly sensitive person to shine, to be seen, to be present. There's real ripples of sadness or something just
Like, what's coming up for you? What kind of physical sensations?
sort of in my torso where I can hold that little highly sensitive boy. And I think, Shane, what I did was I grew up and I woke up spiritually, and I've now come to realize that I am 6'1" or 185 centimeters tall. I'm 80 kilos. I'm big enough to look after myself. I'm 50 years of age, and I'm prepared to stand up and say, hello, this is it. And I am very mindful that all of us now have an end call button, or we all walked in a door that we can walk out. I'm really happy to say to people, if you don't like it here, you're welcome to leave the same door that you came in. It's okay by me. If you don't want to be on this call, just press end call. It's okay by me. So I recognize there's a real confidence in myself that I'm able to hold who I am. And I still don't get it when people reflect it back to me, but to hold who I am, to be present, to be I am, just to be I am, and be present with that. And people will come and people will go and people will like that and people will not like that. And that's all okay. It's really great. I have a beautiful community and circle of people around me that anyone is welcome to join and anyone is welcome to leave. So that highly sensitive little boy that wasn't protected, wasn't illuminated, wasn't encouraged, wasn't protected, I do that right now. I do that for myself, mostly. Yeah, proud of myself for that. I think that's one of my greatest achievements.
It's the ultimate for all of us, as we've learned and as we share with others in this work, that the Western model of medicine is about getting rid of pain. Everywhere we look, we're taught to get rid of our pain. And you talked about your 30 years of running away and trying to get rid of the pain. And we have other episodes where we really dive deep with our guests about addiction. I think that our conversation here is about this holding. It's about getting to the other side, about not running away, because getting rid of is not healing. Healing is the holding of the self, the holding of the pain, just being able to understand. And I'm sitting here talking to a Buddhist and a mindfulness practitioner, and I know you have things to say about what these modalities have given you in this capacity. I was hoping you could share a little bit with the listeners about how meditation, mindfulness, Buddhism have given you this capacity to hold pain, because life is painful.
It is, J'aime, and I really thank you for that question. And as you were chatting, you said the holding, and the word that arose for me, it's not the holding, because that implies a duality, a separation. It's the wholeness. It's the wholeness of the person. And for me, spirituality isn't about getting rid of, or fixing or changing anything. It's about the wholeness. Can I be with the wholeness of who I am? Can I be with it? And I'm getting much better at that. And I really feel that Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta non-duality teachings have taught me so much about that. And being in communities where, certainly in Buddhist communities and Advaita communities, that it is okay to be exactly as you are. Because what you are is that wholeness. I do a lot of thinking in the lying bed, going to sleep. And I was thinking about the phrase of a being, whether that's source as a being or a person as a being. And I thought to myself, we are not a being, we are being. We are the beingness. And through Buddhist studies and Advaita Vedanta studies, learning what that being is, not the being, but being, that being. That beingness in me is the same as the beingness in you and all our listeners and everybody else in the world. And when we lean into that, because I kind of lean back into that, I am actually what I actually am. The truth of my nature is beingness, not a being, it's beingness. And I really take such resolve and strength and power and agency from that, from realizing I am beingness. And it also allows me, that it really seems to feed into the humanness of my personality. I like to be really playful. And when I lean back and appreciate that I and you and everyone listening is this emptiness, as it's called in Buddhism, or beingness or source, it really makes me look out into the world and absolutely have a smile on my face at every single thing I see. I just be in this conscious, I don't speak about this a lot, and here I am doing it on a podcast. I look at the world and I'm in a complete state of awe all the time and appreciating that everything is everything. And from that, compassion grows, from that, love grows, from that, appreciation grows. And those teachings, Buddhist teachings, Advaita teachings, and meditation in particular, to sit in meditation for long periods of time is a special thing.
What does that teach you, sitting in meditation for long periods of time? How does that help you when you step out into the world where you get cut off in traffic and all kinds of triggers happen?
What it teaches me, J'aime, is that my mind is absolutely bonkers. That's what it teaches me. That when I sit back and just watch my mind, learn mindfulness, and you will never be bored again in your life. Because if I ever sense boredom coming, I just have to close my eyes and watch my mind and think, my mind is absolutely bonkers. Bonkers. That's what sitting in meditation for long periods of time does. It teaches me to give myself a little bit of distance between the bonkersness of my mind and to not always believe what it's thinking or wanting to do or striving for or avoiding or craving. To just think that my mind's doing that thing again. And it's hilarious. I was telling a friend that if someone put microphones in my house, I live alone, and they heard me, I'm in constant dialogue with myself, out loud. Hi, hey, Kev, you fancy a cup of tea? I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And I laugh at myself at this this mind that I have that is just so bonkers is the best word. And I use that compassionately. And what mindfulness has taught me to do is to take a break from that, step back from that, to appreciate that that's not the truth. That's not what I actually am. To allow it to happen, I know that it's there and it's bonkers, but it's not who I am. Through meditation, through mindfulness, particularly longer periods of meditation, it really allows you just to step back from that a little bit. Can I tell a very brief story?
Please.
I like to tell about this. I was in Vipassana Meditation a couple of years ago, I think maybe 3 years ago. And Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation thing. Wake up at 4 a.m. and you do meditations all day until 9 p.m. and you go to bed, rinse and repeat for 10 days. And on day 6 or something of this, completely silent, no phones, no journaling, no music, no podcasts, no reading, no writing, just meditating, eating, bathroom, sleep. And on day 6, during Vipassana, what you get for your dinner is 2 pieces of fruit. And on about day 6, after 6 days of silence, we were queuing up for our pieces of fruit. And there's lots of these printed signs that say 2 pieces of fruit per student. And as I'm watching the queue, standing there in silence, being awake from 4 a.m. the last 6 days, and I can see a couple of guys at the front and they're taking like 3 pieces of fruit. And as I stood in the queue, I could hear my mind. I'm going to swear now, so it's just the inner workings of my mind. And I can hear my mind saying, "Hey, asshole, it says fucking 2 pieces of fruit on the sign, not 3. Why are you taking 3 pieces of fruit? What sort of asshole takes 3 pieces of fruit? All of us guys are still queuing up." I could hear this in my mind going, just to watch that and go, "Kev, it's not your fruit. You're not taking it. It's none of your goddamn business what the guy is doing." And then to ask myself, where else in my life does my mind want to get involved in things that are absolutely none of its business? And the answer to that is all the time. When I hear myself or my mind wanting to get involved in things, I have a little mantra to myself now. I hear my mind getting involved stuff. And I just say, "Kev, 2 pieces of fruit." That just immediately brings me back to the present moment. So mindfulness has taught me to watch this monkey mind doing its thing, out of control, being crazy, and not always follow it.
I also see a unwiring of a learned behavior in that particular very relevant example of the service worker, the one who grew up in a food service setting.
Right.
I did also, I think, read another blog post where you talked about being no, it was a conversation on a show where you talked about going to a restaurant and you had terrible service. And it's like, oh, that sounds exactly like me. Like you'll never, if you're a good server, if you're a very attuned server, it's over for you. Fine dining. We have ideas about the way people need to be treated. It can ruin our good time, I think, if it's not going the way we think it should go. I bring this up because I'm hearing this way that we get into other affairs that truly have nothing to do with us, truly are none of our business. Everyone here listening has their example of where their mind and how their mind does that, and the shitstorm that creates internally, where that takes you so far away from your own present moment experience and enjoying your delicious meal.
Completely.
So I'm appreciating that example because it takes us back around to something that feels really relevant where we started this conversation of the gifts of trauma, truly. And I think that we walk our whole lifetime with the nuancing, the finessing of the gifts of the pearls that we glean from the grits of sand that used to really irritate our skin, that have now become these incredible, incredible pearls that leave people having the best hug they've ever had in their life. This is a nuanced conversation. This is a nuanced exploration. And the other thing I wanted to relay that I'm thinking about as you're talking about all of this meditation, just as you standing in that line had the shitstorm come through, it passed.
Exactly.
And what remained was a part of you that said, "Oh, Cav." So let's talk a little bit about that too. I think that's important as we close our conversation, because this has to do with relational holding that we do for our clients. the practitioner, the one who learns to do this for themselves, is able to offer this and then give the clients something that they didn't get in their childhood, relational holding, someone connecting to them as they're feeling their pain.
Yeah, Jim, thank you. And I think the greatest thing that I give people who work with me is to say to them, that's okay. When people are talking about their difficulties or their struggles or the pain that they have or whatever else they're experiencing, say, okay, wait, can we just stand with that? Can we be with that? You're fine. You're perfect. And I think people really appreciate that I have that part of me that you're fine. You're absolutely fine. And I don't mean that in that dismissive way. A dismissive parent would say, there's nothing wrong with you, get on with it. But that message to people that there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. And when people hear that, I can see somatically their shoulders drop, their face relax, just to be in a space where whatever they're bringing is fine. And not only, Jem, is it fine, quite often when we take a little step back and look at it, hilarious, funny, serious, but funny. Here I am freaking out about this thing. And when we take a little bit of distance from it, quite often laugh at it. Crazy. And it has happened for me and that this is going on in my mind. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. And you have this thing that operates and it's okay. So that part of me that can lean back into that holding of myself and holding of others, I'm really happy that whatever that is, that it has allowed me to see it, that it has revealed itself to me, or it has revealed me to myself. Well, I don't know what the line works, but whatever that is, that holding part of me, playful and creative and humorous and loving and kind and caring and generous and forgiving. And I'm really happy that it revealed itself to me because I enjoy stepping back into that aspect of myself. That's truth.
Yeah. You arrive into a space where people can be met with compassion, sensitivity, and ultimately divine comedy of the drama and the, like you said, the bonkers-esque quality of our mindscape. And this is an incredible gift that you have gleaned from all of these hours and all of this service that you've done to and for yourself that is also being slid over to the people that you witness when you can bring in that dry humor, even, with the team. And right now I'm referencing our Compassionate Inquiry podcast team. When it gets intense, we're creating something. It's our baby. We take it very seriously sometimes. You bring a lightness, a levity. You touch all of the places and then you help us lift and you create space to laugh. And I think, that's something that we don't find enough in this world, certainly with spiritual people. As Richard Rudd says, like, spiritual people can be some of the most serious people. And so thank you. Thank you for bringing levity.
And I don't do a lot of that at all, but I often say to my psychedelic loving friend, and I'm going to swear again for the purpose of this story. I say to my psychedelic loving friends, how fucking psychedelic do you want it to be? Lips. Like, holy shit, there's like green things growing out of the ground and there's balls of energy talking to each other through computer screens. And how much more psychedelic can it be? Like, really? I think that's kind of my outlook on life.
How much more psychedelic of a political landscape can we have?
Totally.
It's so true.
Totally.
So true.
Yeah, it makes me chuckle all the time. I just have to laugh at. I'm like with deep compassion, laughing with the world of deep compassion and thinking, you're fine. It's okay. Relax. Let's talk about this. Let's feel into it. Let's be with it. We're all good.
Yeah, I really celebrate the journey of coming back to that and being that person again. Like, it would have been nice to find that 20 years ago, sure. Would have been great, but you also wouldn't have the same capacity to witness people. I don't believe your gift of sensitivity would be as widely shareable as it is had you not gone through those experiences yourself. It's just how the gift works. It emerges through the shadow. Yeah.
Our time's coming to an end, and I think the greatest gift that certainly compassionate inquiry has played a large part in, and meditation and spiritual inquiry has given me, is that for the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, I'm just happy being me.
And for the people out there listening that may find themselves in that fury of movement and motion and reactivity, or perhaps in a non-compassionate relationship with themselves, I was wondering if there's anything in particular they need to know today.
Just that it's all good. You're okay. You're okay. Yeah. And if you don't believe that or can't believe that, then find a space where you can feel that. Find a space where you can bring your craziness, your wackiness, your whatever you bring, and for that to be okay.
There's nowhere to go. I don't know where to go. There's nowhere for me. I don't have any space. There's no space for me. I have to take care of everybody else. There's too many things to do. What do you do with someone who believes that?
If that's how it is for you, okay. Just, I'm not going to force anyone to change or be any different. Yeah, if that's what you're holding on to right now, that's what you need to believe to get through. I was going to say, Jim, I would also, after saying that to my client, or the person that I was working with, you're okay, and for them to say, I'm not, there's no space for me, I got to look after everyone else, and say, okay, sure. If that's how it is for you, great. And I can see myself just waiting a few seconds and then playfully saying, but I don't believe you. She said, I don't believe that's true. Because we can all walk on the street. We can all find a field to stand beside. We can all look at the clouds. We can all take 5 minutes. We can all sit on the loo. So I would allow them to have that belief and playfully say, I don't believe you.
I think that's beautiful. A playful reminder that we're free.
Yeah.
We are free.
If you choose to be so.
The mind creates the world, right?
Completely.
Well, Kevin, grateful to spend some time with you today. And thank you. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being the sensitive person you are in this world, and also simultaneously being so willing to show yourself in your sensitivity, to share yourself, to share your experience. I think that's just incredible milestone of growth for somebody who feels a lot to put themselves out there so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Jim. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Through my eyes you view this world. With my tongue you're talking. To say the things that I might say. In my boots you're walking.
If you're not a therapist or a healer, but you heard our guest describe the personal transformations they experienced during their compassionate inquiry journeys and wonder, what might that be like for me? There is a program that is offered to anyone who wants to experience the power of Gabor Mate's approach to trauma healing. I'm Kevin Young, and I've been facilitating CI circles since 2022. I've seen people transform in many ways. I've seen people change beliefs, relationships. I've seen people change how they show up in the world. I have seen people literally change how they look in front of my very eyes. There are many, many ways that people change during compassionate inquiry circles. Circles is a 10-week small group experience, and registrations are opened until January 26th. Click the link in the show notes. That'll bring you to a web page that gives you all you'll need to figure out if this is for you.
You're not me. You're not me. You're not me.
The Gifts of Trauma is a weekly podcast that features personal stories of trauma healing, transformation, and the gifts revealed on the path to authenticity. Please note, this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personal therapy or a DIY formula for self-therapy.
Ensured that I was listening. Come back to me, come back, she said. Don't be a lonely demon. To rid myself of the hateful man. To the ground I punched and kicked him. You're not me. You're not me. You're not me. No, you're not me. You're not me. Now my lover I do hold. Her bosom I am keeping close to my own, and for our love again I'll not be weeping. You're not me. You're not me. You're not me. No, you're not me. 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 No, you're not me. You're not me.
We'd like to thank you for being here today, and we'd also like to thank our guests, as well as Gabor Mate, Sataram Kaur, and the Compassionate Inquiry admin team, marketing team, and podcast team. Please join us again next week to hear more stories of transformation and healing through compassionate inquiry.